Okay, back at it again. If you're watching this, I got my guy Stuckey from the Action Network. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's up and running. We do little gambling content here every single week with, one of the best in the business. You can find him on the Action Network. You can find him on Big Bets on Campus. Go subscribe to that as well. And just firing off tweets left and right when games are rolling. Stuckey, let's do a quick look back to last week. Starting on Saturday, I had Ohio State in the points, even though I don't even like Ryan Day. It's just like that was a lot of points. It was close. I thought actually Ohio State, and you've been saying this for a while, their defense is clearly a lot better than it's been. They definitely didn't get housed, but Michigan covered on that one. But the big game of the day came on Sunday, Bills-Eagles. You've been all over, statistically. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we're recording this before the Cowboy game. Their point differential is 100 points difference than the Cowboys. And that's pretty wild, right? And the Bills didn't just have them on the ropes. I mean, we're kicking their ass, but they find a way to fucking win. Now, the Bills covered, but holy moly, this Eagles team. I mean, are they going to go 15-2 with a point differential of 50?
Yeah, things keep progressing the way that they do. Luckily, the Bills won the toss. I mean, but the Eagles have had something. Well, we'll talk about them in a second, but they've had something just every week. There's a bunch of things that just break their way to get these wins. And you got to give them credit for, they deserve some credit for pulling them out. But last week it was the officials. I mean, some of the missed PI calls. There was 10 penalties on the Bills in the first half. 8 in the first quarter, most of any quarter in the league this year. And then the Eagles didn't get their second penalty until a minute to go in the game. Then obviously the Bills missed 2 field goals. The Eagles hit a 60-yarder, but luckily, and I was on my knees almost, just saying, please win the toss. And Buffalo luckily did. Otherwise, they probably would have lost by 6.
How about the drive really quick at the end of regulation? Sean McDermott playing this like prevent defense, just giving up easy yards and letting them just, I mean, he gave them 30 yards. They didn't even have to break a sweat. It's like, what? Why don't you just play normal? It's raining. The chances of them hitting some crazy big play is difficult. I don't understand. I understand prevent defense. If you're up, they need to score a touchdown, right, to tie.
Yeah.
But to go in that position to just play way off and give up easy yards, you're one broken tackle or a juke away from giving up a 25-yard play that way. I fucking despise that.
Awful. Yeah. And then he wasted a timeout to ice the kicker. I think in that situation, you give the kicker more time with like conditions and to figure out how they want to kick it and like get comfortable in the spot. I think it's bad. And then because of that, you only have one timeout left. You get the ball back with 25 seconds left. You have a kicker with a big leg, and then you take a knee. This game was for your season, and you just saw
and a playmaking quarterback with a big arm.
Yeah, 2 years prior, you kicked off, tied, and the Chiefs scored, went down the field in 13 seconds and kicked a field goal. And you're leaving so much up to a coin toss. Your season went down to coin toss. I mean, apparently you didn't learn anything. So, yeah, that was a wild game. Fortunately, Buffalo held on for the cover. Your Ohio State bet, I think that was actually the right side. I mean, if you go back and look, McCord ultimately just wasn't the guy. He wasn't going to win a national title with the way that he was playing. But if you go back to that game, questionable touchdown call, which I actually thought was really an interception. Michigan 3 for 3 on 4th down. And Ohio State, McCord gifted them a touchdown with an interception, but they still had a chance to win a game at the end. So I don't think that was a terrible bet. But
JJ was better than I thought. I mean, he played better in that game than he had, to me, like the way he had looked previously.
Yeah. I think that he might have been dealing with little something, and I think they were probably just playing everything close to the vest over the 2 previous weeks. But speaking of looking back last weekend, I was giving you some shit on Twitter. How did your Traeger turkey turn out?
Not bad. Now, yeah. my brother, who is a Traeger master, I would say, it wasn't a solo mission. He, by the time we threw that thing in at about 12:30, brined it for 24 hours.
That's a key. You got to brine.
So brined it, brought it out, about noon on Turkey Day. ton of butter inside. You had it spatchcock so you could kind of break it down, butter all over the place, injecting it with butter, did some seasoning on the outside, and it took about 3 hours. I got this $1,500 Traeger barbecue. The problem is it's a smoker. I tried to barbecue some fillets on it. It's a little weird. Like it's obviously made for specific things, but the turkey is sweet. I think I'm going to have to, the ribs, the tri-tips, some of the pork, some brisket, things like that. I'm just gonna have to learn on the fly. I've never been a smoker, but now maybe I am.
Yeah, we used to do it. We used
very moist.
What's that?
Very moist meat.
Yes, yeah. It's once you get it right. I mean, it's amazing. And yeah, I guess out your way, you gotta get it down for some money. Tri-tip sandwiches.
Exactly. Okay, let's hit on a couple games Saturday. Obviously, Michigan's an enormous favorite over Iowa. Bama, while they were already in this game, let's face it, they got pretty lucky. I mean, a great throw, great play, but to win a game like that, I mean, maybe it was a football gods throwing Saban a bone back for the kick six way back in the day. But now, a little like when you say a divisional game, where if you have like a 10-win team playing like a 3-win team in late November, early December, sometimes some of these games are going to be tight. That game, Auburn had just lost to New Mexico State, which was probably the worst thing that ever happened to Bama because that's going to wake them up. It's in Auburn. The place was going bananas. I saw a stat this week that Kirby has more national championships than wins against Saban. Now, obviously, he didn't play him last year because LSU beat him. So I would say this Georgia team over the last 3 years is a little different than the versions he's had before. It's more their equal. But is there something of, mentor versus the mentee? It's obviously one of the goals. I think this is one of the better coaching jobs Saban has done. I mean, early on, you're like, God, is this team going to go like 8-4? I had a scouting buddy that had went through there. He's like, bro, I've been going through this program for 12, 15 years. I think they are going to struggle to get to 9 wins. And Milroe obviously played better. The schedule, they took advantage of it, but they did. I mean, beat the shit out of Lane. Like they won that kind of tight Texas A&M game when Texas A&M was kind of still alive and playing well. And we know how talented they are. So they've just played well and they found a way to win that game. But is this a sucker's bet? I see it's 5.5, or is it just, you can never discount a GOAT on his, he doesn't have that much longer left.
Yeah, the 4th and 30. Teams were 0 of 90 on 4th and 30 or more over the past 2 seasons before that play. Auburn, for some reason, only rushed 2, which I hate in that situation. And they had a quarterback spy. I mean, who cares if the quarterback runs there?
How does a guy get behind you if you're a DB? Like, how is all the DBs, not – there are 2 – one in front and one behind everybody. How do you let anyone get behind you?
Incredible, yeah. Milroe does throw one of the most accurate deep balls in NCAA history.
Looked like Favre. I mean, it had a little loop to it, but it was a beautiful pass.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Saban's done a great job this year. If you go back earlier in the season, Milroe got benched before a game when Alabama played at South Florida and almost lost. Yeah. I think it was 6-3 in the 4th quarter against South Florida, and Bama was a laughing stock. So, yeah, Milroe has really turned it around. They made some schematic changes on offense. I don't hate the bet. I make it around 5-ish, so I don't see much value. I did play a little under 55.5. But it's scary because if you go back and look, since 2005, the SEC championship has, if you just go back and look at the scores, you'll notice this right away, has gone over 13. The over's 13-4-1. You get all those premier athletes on a fast track, right? You're used to, you're now playing in a dome. There tends to be points, but neither of these offenses have really played a good defense all year. If you look at who Georgia's played, I mean, Georgia's schedule has been laughable.
Awful.
Yeah. Their average schedule of opponents faced from a defensive perspective, 88th. So they haven't really faced a good defense. And I trust both defenses more than I do each offense. Both teams are playing really slow this year too. A lot of familiarity in the staff. So I don't know. I thought it was a little too high. don't love anything there, but you're right. This is just with the familiarity. Last time I think Bama was a 6-point dog a couple years ago, and they won outright in the SEC championship.
Kind of took it to him. Kind of took it to him. I remember in the second half, right?
Yep. There's so much talent on the field, so much familiarity. That if you want to take the dog here, I don't think it's a terrible bet. I just am pretty close to where the market is. I think it should be a good competitive game.
Well, to me, the Big 12 championship is like a multiple touchdown game. Obviously, the Big 10 game, I mean, you could probably make that spread fucking 35 and people probably still take Michigan. You know, if you're listening to this on Friday, the Pac-12 game, I mean, by kickoff, I mean, it's hovering around 9.5, 10 points. I mean, that's a lot for a team that Washington hasn't lost. I mean, these are enormous spreads, right, for championship games. Do you have any in the ACC games? A little weird because Jordan Travis had his ankle shattered, so it's hard to I don't even know what to make of that. But of the other three with big spreads, any dog that you like to win outright? If you were going to, sprinkle a little?
Yeah,
I guess you wouldn't even count Iowa. So it'd just be Oklahoma State or Washington.
Yeah, it's Oklahoma State. It's hard for me to see them having a chance of winning. I mean, Gundy, a lot though in these spots against ranked teams and underdog, he always seems to overperform. But you can't run on Texas. Arguably the best run defense in college football, and the entire Oklahoma State offense is Ollie Gordon, their star running back. The only time they've been able to throw is when he gets going and it sets up play action, but no one can run on Texas. Many teams have tried. No one has been able to do it, including Alabama. And then on the other side, Oklahoma State's secondary is horrendous. So Texas, look, I might be able to look Texas team total over 34.5. I think might be a good look there because they need to win. They need to win with style. You know, the committee always says it doesn't matter, but yeah, they're humans. So I think Texas wants to put up a number here. There's a reason that Texas, that line opened at the 13.5, 14 minutes. There's been money that crossed that pretty easily. When I look at those other underdogs, I think Oregon is going to win this game. They are the better team. Washington's offense also just hasn't been right, but I mean, it's a very efficient line. I mean, it's been priced into it. There's only been two other instances where an undefeated top 5 team has been an underdog of more than a touchdown in the conference championship over the past 30 years. It happened with Alabama and Florida back in, I want to say 2008. And Alabama was a 7.5 point dog. They lost by 10. And then it happened Notre Dame Clemson back in the COVID year. And that's the only other time where the two teams actually played each other. Notre Dame beat Clemson in the regular season. And this is when the Notre Dame was in the ACC for that year. Then in the ACC championship, they were 11-point dogs. They lost by 30. But keep in mind, Trevor Lawrence didn't play in the first meeting during the regular season. But this is an unprecedented. Like, 2 top 5 teams, you already beat them, and now you're catching close to double digits on a neutral field. I don't see any value in Oregon. I do think Florida State's going to go down. This is just the team. Look, Florida's defense last week, Tate Rodemaker, I think it's like a 10-point drop off from Jordan Travis to Tate Rodemaker. And I think the worst thing that happened to Florida State, obviously besides Travis getting hurt, is Louisville losing to Kentucky last week. I think they'll come out focused here, but they had 220 total yards against Florida. Florida's defense is horrendous. They've given up 430 plus yards in 4 straight games. I think 40 plus every week leading up to that. Florida State broke a run late and finished with 220 yards of total offense. I trust the Louisville offense much more. Games on a neutral field. Could be a lot of rain. I think Rodemaker is going to make a couple key mistakes. And I think Louisville wins that game. App State, if you something in the group of 5, I like to. But yeah, I think that the team that's going to go down that I feel confident the most in the group of 5 games is Florida State, which would solve all of the discourse and arguments that are so meaningless because we're never going to have to do this again on Twitter about most deserving or best teams.
I know.
At the end of the day, look, yes, it's a kind of a hybrid. It's most deserving, but also you want to put the best teams in. You use the resume to judge that. But if a team that loses their quarterback and they're 10 points worse, no one want, like, you can say it's a committee. It's ultimately a TV show. You can say you're not in. I would not put Florida State in. The one caveat being, look, you have two chances. Last week you won, but you were outgained 225 to 224. You have one more chance to prove it. If Rodemaker comes out here, looks amazing, right? Gets a pretty good Louisville defense with two potential pro corners, and he throws for 300 yards, and Florida State wins by 2 touchdowns. I'm cool. Let them in. They deserve it, and their quarterback looked competent enough. But if they lose, obviously they're out. But if they win like 13-10 in a monsoon, get them out. No one. I mean, we don't need to wait a month to see Georgia as a 17-point favorite over the Seminoles with a backup quarterback.
Totally agree. Before we dive into the NFL, I'm not some recruiting nerd. I do think this transfer portal, when it comes to the quarterbacks, is really fascinating. And the Duke quarterbacks in it, obviously Cam Ward at Washington State is in it. Like those type players, whether they go to Ohio State, maybe they go to Florida State, whether they, wherever they go next year, just has huge implications, especially now with the 12-team playoff, right? I mean, there are sometimes I see a quarterback, it's like, this is a big move. It's like, this guy was not even good this year, but there are going to be a couple, and we've seen this now multiple times, right? I mean, hell, you got Penix and Bo Nix. And I think Bo Nix is a good example. There's always going to be a guy that you think, this guy was kind of shitty, and then he resurrects his career. But I think it's going to be fascinating. Riley Leonard and Cam Ward. Obviously, I don't know if you saw Matt Rule said yesterday the going rate's like $1.5–2 million for these guys. And to me, if I was a booster or part of a program, like I wouldn't be cutting $400,000 checks to high school recruits. Hell, I watched the UCLA guy this year, 5-star, chip stolen from Oregon for a bunch of money. He's fucking terrible. It's too risky. But like you get Cam Ward, you got a real player. I'd be like, I'll cut the checks for that. Listen, you can say what you want. I think Dion got humbled a little bit this year, but he is right. Like we're not going to be an ATM machine for the recruits, but the transfer portal is a different story. So to me, Riley Leonard, fascinating guy. I think Notre Dame feels like an early leader. And Cam Ward, I think everyone's going to be all over him. So it's Alabama. I mean, all these teams. I mean, you're talking huge money.
Yeah, Riley Leonard makes a ton of sense. Just like, similar to the Sam Hartman move, almost like ACC school down on Tobacco Road, kind of just being groomed and then transfers up to Notre Dame. But I agree. I mean, Dion is taking that approach. I think in the recruiting rankings, they're like 60th.
They're not good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then there's also the trickle down effect of a team. Now, unfortunately, I still like them this weekend, but it's dicey. There's a team like SMU that, their quarterback Preston Stone is out for the year. The crazy thing about this weekend, one of the hardest weekends, college championship weekends, conference championship weekends that I've ever had to handicap. On Saturday, there's 16 quarterbacks that'll play. 9 of the 16 either didn't start the year as the starter or got benched at one point during the year. Wow. And you're going to have a guy, in Florida State, a true backup who looked bad, maybe 10-point drop off, but still a lot of uncertainty. And then SMU has a kid who was the highest recruit in program history, Preston Stone, 4 borderline 5-star. He broke his leg last week. He's out for the year. So now you're going to this other kid, huge unknown with Kevin Jennings. But SMU, their defense did a complete 180. It was, they were one of the worst defenses in college football last year. And if you look, and then this year they were out of this world, top 5 in success rate, yards per play allowed. You look, and it's just, they brought in, I think 9 of their 11 starters were.
Are they in the Big 12? No, they're not, huh?
No, they're probably going to move to the ACC.
Okay,
is what the move is there. But they have they had 3 Miami cast-offs. Guys that were getting time, but just not starting consistently. A couple Big Ten guys. And then, so you could see some of these, you could just, it doesn't have to be a group of 5 team. SMU, I think, is eventually in the ACC. But you could see a team that does it right, just all of a sudden one unit can drastically change if you hit on all of your portal additions. So, it definitely, and you couldn't do that with recruiting. You couldn't just
No.
drastically turn around and your entire defense in one season. That takes time. So yeah, it's a whole new world. We'll see if a team like Clemson continues to be stubborn, because it's definitely holding them back.
It's football season, and you can now get almost anything you need for game day delivery with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Can Uber Eats deliver foam fingers? No. But chicken fingers? Yes. Touchdown dances? No. Buttermilk ranches? Yes. Field goals? No. Grilling coals? Yes. Running backs? No. Ribs? Yes. Blitzes? No. Beers? Yes. Defense? No. Deodorant? Yes. Game-clinching turnovers? No. But pastry turnovers? You know, the kind with delicious apple filling? Oh yeah, because that's groceries. And get those delivered with Uber Eats too, along with food from your favorite restaurants and other essentials. And the best part, you can get it all without missing a second of action on your TV. There you have it. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details. Okay, let's go to the National Football League. The Green Bay Packers, who, listen, you just had to go off what you saw because the guy had never played early on in the season. I thought he looked terrible. Now, these last 2 weeks, the Lions defense is awful and the Chargers defense is an abomination, but he kind of lit them up. I mean, Thanksgiving, before you could even blink, they had a couple touchdowns and he drove them right down the field twice. He looks good. I mean, no one's ever argued, and this is the reason they took a flyer on him out of Utah State. His physical attributes were always really intriguing. Big arm, could move. And I mean, listen, based on the last 2 weeks, like, they should be pretty excited. He puts a couple more of these together. One, they're going to win enough games. And two, like, they're going to be out of drafting a quarterback. He's going to be their starting quarterback next year. Is Green Bay for real right now? Do they have a lot of momentum? Was it fake? I don't know. But the Chiefs were kind of getting worked by the Raiders. Now, once a year, they tease the Raiders. Like, I've been watching the Raiders for a decade. They love fucking with them for a little bit, and then they just end up winning, sometimes in convincing fashion, like winning a game. They were up down 14-0 and then 31-3 the rest of the game. Sometimes it's a walk-off field goal, but they always do this once a year with the Raiders. But I don't know. They're going to be a tough out because of the coach, because home field potentially, and their quarterback. But this team does feel a little off, right? And rightfully so. They're just not as potent on offense. And there's a lot of points. This Packer team has some momentum. The game's in Kansas City, though, correct?
No, Green Bay.
Oh, Green Bay. Yeah. So you're getting points at home. Who do you like?
Yeah, I like Green Bay here. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Kansas City plays with its food every once a year, as you said, when they play the Raiders. But what they haven't done in years past with Mahomes is something that also happened last week, is they go through these droughts on offense. I mean, they went, I think, 4 straight weeks without scoring a point in the second half, which is amazing. I think that they also are, plus, I think, 75 or plus 80 scoring margin, plus 58 of that is in the final 2 minutes of the first half. The offense is off. Why? Receivers are very underwhelming and are dropping too many balls. They can't find the right rotation. Both tackles, the tackle spots, are playing really poorly. They replaced both tackles. They lead the NFL in penalties. They grade out really poorly. So Mahomes is under more pressure, and the wide receivers aren't as good. So yeah, there's problems with this offense. It's just completely out of sync. You'll see flashes because Mahomes is the best quarterback on the planet, but you also see these just they'll go a whole half without scoring despite having Mahomes. And Green Bay's defense should be healthier this week. It's just a good spot, too, for the Packers. They played on Thanksgiving. You get extra rest, extra prep here. They're basically playing for their season. Yeah, they could still make the playoffs. The NFC is bad at the bottom. But you win this game, you're right back in the mix. And the Chiefs, they're coming off their second straight road game for, an out-of-conference game against a Packers team that's under 500. The Chiefs have the Bills next week. A little bit of a sleepy spot, even though it's in prime time. But Jordan Love's playing his best football of the year, as you alluded to. And this offense is finally clicking. And that makes sense to me because, number one, their offensive line got healthy. They had to deal with a bunch of offensive line injuries early in the year. But you have Jordan Love and basically like 3 or 4 rookie wide receivers. And so it makes sense that there was growing pains early. that they had to figure some things out. And it also makes sense once that, a very young core gets confidence that they're going to be able to build on that. And then you're going to see some good results. And I think that's what's happening right now. So, yeah, I just don't trust this Chiefs offense to win by margin. And if you go back to week 7, and this speaks to kind of the ascent of the Packers offense and the struggles of the Chiefs offense since week 7, if you look at all quarterbacks in the NFL and look at adjusted EPA per play, which adjusts for opponent, Jordan Love, 9th, Mahomes, 10th. Adjusted completion percentage, Mahomes, 11th, Love, 12th. And Love is averaging 2 more air yards per attempt, throwing it downfield more. So, and I'm not trying to compare Love and Mahomes. That just speaks to the issues on the Chiefs offense right now. A lot of them drops on the offensive line, and how much better this Packers offense is playing. So, yeah, I think there's a bit too many points. This is when you want to fade the Chiefs. And they'll probably find a way to win by a field goal. But I think the Packers are live, and was happy to take the 6 points.
Well, I mean, all the Packer wide receivers Andy would gladly take. Right?
Yes.
I mean, all the young guys, they would actually they would fit perfectly in that offense. He'd be throwing bombs to Watson, 11, like he would like them all.
Yep.
So yeah, I like them all. I mean, they're an intriguing young offense if Jordan Love is going to be more than functional. Okay, this game's big, and if I would have told you 2 months ago that one of the biggest games of the week is going to be Houston and Denver, you'd be like, what? And obviously Denver is just rattling off wins. Russell is not near the same what he used to be in his prime, but he is much more functional as a player than he was when it looked like he was completely shot. And to me, their defense, like last week against the Browns, they were every bit as physical, if not more. Like I'm not the biggest Vance Joseph guy, and how could you be when he gives up 70 points? But they have been much better, and they don't exactly. I mean, this ain't Steve Atwater walking through the door here. Houston, to me, I've always said that this year, even as they've gotten they're pretty good. There's no doubt. They feel like a year away. I mean, they got a lot of picks. They're gonna have more cap room, but I don't know. I mean, C.J. Stroud, Tank Dell, stud. I mean, they are obviously their coach is really good. I just they're that team to me this year that's going to end up 8-9. That was like when they win 11 next year, you're going to be like all those games that we didn't quite win, we win next year. I would take the Broncos, but maybe I'm drinking too much of the Sean Payton Kool-Aid right now.
Yeah, I like Houston here. Look, Stroud, he might have his full receiver room for the first time since week 1. He's great. He also rips apart cover 3, which we'll see a lot of when he plays Denver. And the Broncos blitz a lot and don't get pressure. They blitz at the 11th highest rate. They're getting pressure at bottom 5 rate. Stroud, with a clean pocket this year, been the best quarterback in the NFL, and has actually handled the blitz pretty well. Still young, still inexperienced. If you can get pressure on him without needing the blitz, that's when some trouble arises. But that's not something the Broncos can do. And look, the Broncos defense is drastically improved. They made some changes. They got, guys like Browning and Jones back healthy in the front 7. They put McMillan, stud rookie, in a slot. They removed one of the worst, Damari Mathis, one of the worst corners in the NFL. They took him out of the lineup, put in Fabian Moreau, just a more serviceable vet. A guy you're going to get targeted if you're opposite Surtain. So the defense definitely has improved, but it is still a bad defense. They've won 5 straight. And if you dig into it a little more, 3 of them came by a total of 5 points. They have a plus 14 turnover margin over the past 5 games. Teams have turned it over 16 times, and they've only turned it over twice. That has driven 40% of their points. And if you remove and they're only
that Chiefs game that they won, they had 5, right?
Yeah, and you're playing Mahomes with the flu. Even last week with the Browns, their entire defense gets hurt. Yeah, DTR gets hurt. But all these turnovers have allowed the Broncos to just keep playing how they play. Like they just want to hand it off, give Russ easy throws. They're not a team that's built to come from behind. And if you look since week 7, that's when they made some of these changes on the defense, and they've improved, and they have, because they're not the historically bad unit we saw earlier in the year. But if you remove turnovers, they are 25th in EPA per play, 24th in success rate. In comparison, the Houston defense 16th and 5th. So, and the Houston defense has been really good against the run. And Denver doesn't throw it downfield, which is where you have to attack Houston. So there's a lot of bounces that have been going Denver's way, which I think have inflated the perception on the Broncos. They've also forced 14 fumbles on the year. They've recovered 12. No other teams recovered more than 9. They've had extreme turnover luck. I think this is a good matchup. I think Houston will, especially for the offense, I think they're going to jump out to a lead. And I don't think Denver, if they're not getting turnover luck, can keep up here. For what it's worth, in week 12 or later, if underdogs on a 4 or more game winning streak, so later in the year have won at least 4 straight, have gone 26, 47, and 4 against the spread. That's 35% over the past 20 years. That includes 9, 26, and 1, 25% against the spread in non-division matchups against teams with a winning record. Failing to cover by about double digits on average. That applies to this game. So I'm really selling high. I think it's a good matchup for the Houston offense, and I'm selling high in the Denver luck. But that applies to this game, and it also applies to my next my other favorite bet, which is the 49ers. Those trends.
Yeah, let's dive into the heavyweight matchup. My logic is simple. I think the Eagles are just going to run out of juice. Like, they got to be exhausted, right? You go to the Chiefs on the road, Monday Night Football. You pull out a crazy win. 6 days later, you go into overtime. Most of your defensive players are playing 70 to 90 snaps. The 49ers have kind of, since they got healthy, have had a couple easy games. They just played on Thursday night, so they get 3 extra days to chill. There's an element of everything that happened last year. Once the Eagles won the Bills game, let's face it, this game is not as important, right? I mean, they got the Cowboys the next week. I think the Niners win by like 10.
I agree. This Eagles team's been getting extremely lucky. You got to give them credit for the wins, but every week it's something new. They've won 4 straight games and in each they trailed at the half. They were outgained by 100+ yards, and they should have lost to the Cowboys at home. You saw all those red zone failures. They should have lost to the Chiefs if they don't drop all those balls and the game-winning pass. And the Chiefs, don't give them an interception. I don't know what Mahomes is doing. A Kelsey fumble in the red zone. Last week it's the officials. 4 weeks ago it was Washington in a back-and-forth game. They also could have lost Washington the first meeting. They went for 2. That game went to overtime. This team's 7-1 in one-possession games, getting every bounce. And you said it. Not only is it a good situational spot from the fact that San Francisco's had this game circled since last year, right when they lost that NFC Championship game and they had to play with Christian McCaffrey as quarterback. I'm assuming since that game ended, Shanahan's been working on the script for this game. So they should have an amazing script here. They've had this game circled, but the scheduling spot is amazing. They got the Eagles got their Super Bowl revenge in Kansas City, and again, they went the full 60 minutes. Short week, come back, play Buffalo. That game goes to overtime. Exhausting efforts. Their defense on the field for 92 snaps. Not only that, they had injuries. They won't have linebacker Cunningham. A couple of their defensive linemen, including Fletcher Cox, got banged up. That means like Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, they played career highs in snaps, like 68, 70 snaps for those big guys. I think the Eagles are going to be out of gas here. And then you mentioned with San Francisco, extra time to prepare and rest. They're finally fully healthy. And when they have Debo and Trent Williams in the lineup, they're 8-0 with an average scoring margin of 21 points this season. And they've had 3 straight blowout wins. Like, they should come in with completely fresh legs here. And I think it's a really good matchup. The Eagles defense is not playing well. They have problems in the secondary. Slay and Bradbury aren't getting any younger. And you can attack the Eagles over the middle of the field and in the slot. They can't cover tight ends. I mean, that's a nightmare. They also play a ton of cover 1, which Purdy just dominates, some of the best numbers in NFL history for a single season this year against cover 1. They can't cover slot receivers or tight ends over the middle of the field. Well, good luck with Debo and Kittle, who I think are going to have massive games here. And then on the other side of the ball, the Eagles, they might not have Lane Johnson. He says he's going to play. He usually would play in a situation like this, but it could be some groin injury. Usually, with your star offensive lineman, that's what happened last week. You don't want to play.
Wouldn't you, once you won last week and you didn't need him, if there's any question, wouldn't you just try to save them for the Cowboy game, which is much bigger? You can basically KO them, assuming we're recording this before the Cowboy game. They've won, and that game, like all of a sudden you lose this game. That game's enormous for you.
Yep. Yeah, and same goes for Goddard. They really miss him. They basically just don't have a third guy to throw it to. They miss him on the red zone and they're on third downs. And Hurts is getting healthier, but he's you can still tell he doesn't have the full burst. And when you don't have to worry about him running at full speed, that offense is much easier to defend. And, the 49ers offense, when fully healthy, which it is right now, their Burford practice, their offensive line should be at full strength. I think it's the best offense in the NFL. And it's also a good matchup here. But not enough people are talking about the 49ers defense. And the 49ers defense, one, they've been great over the past 5 weeks. Why? Because one, they added Chase Young, which was the biggest weakest on that defense. You had no other really, defensive end opposite Bosa that opposing offenses had to respect. Add Chase Young in there. What does that mean? I mean, number one, you have Chase Young now there, but also Bosa, Armstead, Hargrave get many more one-on-one matchups. So the pressures increase. We know the 49ers have one of the best linebacker groups in the NFL. But when the pressure goes up, obviously it helps your defensive backfield, which is also improved because they took out Isaiah Oliver, who was in the slot playing at an atrocious level. 86% reception percentage allowed, worst of any corner in the NFL. He allowed 35 catches on 40 targets. Got him out of there, moved Lenore to the slot where he's better suited with his skill set. And then they put in Ambry Thomas outside. And then him and Ward, if you go by some, PFF or other, they've been top 15 corners. And in this particular matchup, I think similar to what they did against Seattle, who has like a big physical receiver and then a more shifty, speedier guy with Metcalf and Lockett, is you can have Ward match up with the physicality of Brown, and you can have Thomas match up with the, shiftier, quicker Devontae Smith. So I think it's a really good matchup for the defense. And this Eagles offense is just out of sync. The defense isn't playing that well, especially against the pass. I think Purdy should have a big day. So, and then the Eagles are just due to not get a bunch of bounces. And they're going to be exhausted, like you said. So, yeah, I love this bet. I think the 49ers win by 10 plus as well.
And I also think, like, people are like, Middlekauff, you're just a homer. Well, the Eagles probably my second team in the NFC. But the reality is, if the Niners win this game and the Eagles still take care of business and are the number one seed, I don't think the NFC, like, I wouldn't handicap, assuming they're both healthy and the Eagles have got a little rest because they get the only bye. I don't know if do you think this line would stay the same for the NFC Championship game, or is more of a pick'em given once we come around, or does it depend how everyone looks?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, the 49ers right now, like from a power rating perspective, are probably at their peak. They're coming off 3 blowouts.
Guys are healthy.
Yeah, everyone's healthy. It can't get any higher. You're week 13. Right now, they are power rated as the best team in the NFL by anyone that's respected in the market, odds makers. Yeah. And, so, I mean, that's why the Eagles are 10-1, and it's the first time in NFL history a team has been an underdog in week 13 or later with a winning percentage of 90% plus. And if you remove, it's happened when teams are sitting their starters in the last week, but this is unprecedented. So their power rating is sky high. Now the Eagles have injuries. They're not playing that well, and they're exhausted, like in this situational spot that we talked about. That's all priced into it. So, you get Goddard, Johnson back, you get some guys back on defense. The offense looks better. I would imagine you'd probably see like San Fran -1 pick in the NFC Championship game. Maybe a pick if the Eagles look a lot better. But if I'm an Eagles fan, to tell you the truth, I would want to lose this game. You're probably going to see San Fran. You're probably going to end up getting the 1 seed. After this gauntlet ends, I mean, Seattle's not playing well either, but after the gauntlet ends against Dallas, their schedule gets pretty easy. Good chance they win out. I think they lose this week and next week personally, and then win out, finish 14-3. you're probably going to get the 1 seed. You want the angry San Fran team who lost to you twice, and just psychologically, when it ultimately doesn't matter. I think this game means a lot more for the 49ers.
It definitely does.
Than it does the Eagles. And they're just not playing well right now. They're getting every bounce, and it's a bad situational spot. And for what it's worth, teams that have a 90% plus winning percentage in week 12 or later over the past 20 years, sample size of about 60 games, they've gone 35% against the spread, which makes sense. In order to get to a 90% plus winning percentage in week 12 or later, you're usually probably at the peak of your market value, which isn't necessarily the case here. But you have teams that people don't want to fade, so there's usually value in fading them. And then in order to get to a 90% winning percentage in the NFL, no matter how good you are, you have to have a lot of luck. So there's also some regression that's coming, and that's certainly the case with the Eagles, who have been very fortunate in a number of ways. So yeah, I love the spot. I love the situation. I love the matchup on both sides of the ball. I love the health rest advantage. You name it. You just hopefully the Eagles aren't down by 7 with the ball with a minute to go in the fourth quarter, because they'll somehow find a way to win. But
he'll go for 2 and win it. One variable is that, and I know he played at Iowa State, so he spent 4 or 5 years. I guess he was a 4-year starter, and I think he started early. So in cold, awful weather, practicing in the spring. So it's not like he's never seen weirdness. But that Cleveland game, when it was raining, it got a little weird with his grip, that being Brock Purdy. So that's, it's the forecast, potential rain on Sunday is definitely just something to keep an eye on. Last year, I think against Seattle in the playoff game, it was raining early. Ball was coming out of his hand a little different. And, when conditions have been perfect, people talking shit about him are just trying to talk shit about him because he was 7th-round pick. He's fucking been good.
Yeah.
But that rain thing is definitely something that would keep everyone's a little, I would say, nervous in 49er land with him, because there's no way. I saw Jalen ask about this yesterday in the press conference. He's like, it is an advantage when we're playing a team that you just practice in it. They can't practice in it. So it's like, I don't know what the weather is right now in Santa Clara, but it ain't pouring rain.
Yeah, no, it's an astute point. I was actually going to bring that up, in that if Philly has home field advantage, that's something to watch
for sure.
Although there's a ton of wind in Santa Clara, but there's been times where Purdy in inclement weather has not looked great. So I looked into that for sure.
You remember that from college?
Yeah, he was at I don't remember being a thing, but he just was inconsistent at times. He was great in October, and then the weather would get worse. So I guess, and then he wasn't as good. So maybe it was weather related. I'll have to dig into that a little bit, but
he doesn't. He has small hands. Relative,
yeah, he has small hands, so it's definitely a thing. So that's something to watch for if these teams play again in conditions in the playoffs. If it's in Philly, what are
maybe he needs to wear a glove?
Yeah, because but I did look into it. There's going to be no wind. It's going to be 60 degrees, and the rain is going to be bad. So you could see occasional showers, but it's not going to be a downpour. It's not going to be terrible conditions as of right now. It could change. It's the fucking weather, who knows? But it's not going to be really bad, because that is something I look at, because there's been some times where I have watched Purdy in really bad conditions, and because of his hand size, you say, "Ooh, maybe this gets iffy." I don't think it's going to be bad enough out to where that matters, but that's definitely worth pointing out.
Okay, Stuckey. This is a good week. Hell, it starts Friday night with a big time Pac-12 game. Adios to the Pac-12, but thanks for giving us one last fun ride this year. And Saturday's a fun day, and obviously Sunday's just a massive day. There are just some playoff games. Even that, now that Green Bay's good, that Green Bay Kansas City game is awfully intriguing. So let's enjoy.
Well, at least we got that,
Eagles.
because the Jags Bengals, that was going to be good, but now it's not on Monday night.
Oh my God, we've gotten some curveballs with some of these primetime games, but I guess football is better than no football, so we can complain all we want, but I'd rather have a game on, even if it's shitty.
Yeah, of course.
Bears Vikings.
Think back to July.
Took us to the limit. Exactly. So you got to think July, June, when there's nothing.
You'd be begging for Browning versus the Jags.
Yeah.
By the way, you didn't mention this week what your big Sunday bet's going to be? 49ers?
Yeah, I mean that's what I feel the best. I did like Denver, but the way you kind of just convinced me, I mean that is a little. You're right. I mean, I bet when you dive into the numbers, the turnover stuff. I mean that, like you said, their biggest win of that stretch is Kansas City, and that was kind of a unique deal. Sick.
Yeah, you're buying them
turnovers.
high. They've won 5 straight. That's not really usually when you want to buy teams. But I agree.
I'm very confident on the Niners right now.
Yeah,
assuming everyone's healthy. You know,
that's
my
favorite bet. Favorite bet of the weekend.
Because when Trent and Debo have played, they have dominated. When those guys were out,
3 touchdown margin on average.
There is just a swag that comes. It's the combination of those two guys because Trent is so physical and they can do so much. And Kyle loves running the ball, and all the play action is based off going the other way to his right tackle side. And then Debo is just, he's just a unique player. They have no
one that can cover him or Kittle. It's a great match.
My one issue is, if this is golf or boxing or UFC, like you can talk shit and you can back it up. Like Debo hates these DBs. He thinks they're scrubs, especially Bradbury. But it's like, well, what if Hassan Reddick likes Bradbury and takes it out on Colton McKivitz? Like that's the only thing. Like you can't speak for like ultimately Burford and Brendel have to block the 2 Georgia defensive tackles. So yeah, like you can dominate, but can your other guys handle themselves? That's the only thing. Like, because the Eagles, this is an easy one. Like we beat these guys last year. Debo has given them some motivation of like not backing down from all the shit he talked, which again, like Debo can say whatever he wants. He's a fucking war dad. He's proven it in the biggest games, but some of his teammates make me a little nervous on offense. And it starts with the right tackle. And the one thing that also makes me nervous is Kyle's scheme. Just a lot of just zone play action. The Eagles are used to seeing that stuff in practice. So last year when he ran that play that got Purdy hurt, like it's hard to fool Reddick or Brandon Graham or some of their edge rushers. They're used to seeing, like, they're not biting on the run down the line of scrimmage and letting Purdy walk. So to me, Purdy's got to be, especially early in the game, just careful because I just don't think their ends are going to bite like some of these teams that they just annihilate. And Hassan Reddick, I mean, last week when he slammed Josh Allen, that was like a old school Lawrence Taylor level play. Yeah. And I think he's going to be coming for Purdy, try to KO him. I just think Brock and Kyle have to be very careful early on. Now, if they get maybe just you kind of tap out, but I do think early on those defensive linemen are be coming for the little quarterback from Iowa.
Yeah, I think they'll have. It's a good point because that is the one probably area that I'm most worried about would be just the other offensive linemen next to Williams against that Eagles front. But I mean, they're exhausted. I mean, I don't think Cox is going to play. Tired. They just got banged up. They played so many snaps last week, so they just might
their linebackers are terrible, and Kyle's scheme annihilates linebackers.
Yeah, and I think they've had this game circled, so I'm assuming, and they've had extra time, so I'm assuming the script will be really good. Get a lead, and then that defense is going to wear down as the game goes on. So, but yeah, that would be my concern too. But yeah, assuming no flukes and the voodoo for the Eagles runs out, I think the 49ers is the best bet of the weekend.
Have you seen the Steelers schedule like the next 4 weeks, by the way?
I think it's a joke. It's a joke, right?
You're going to look up. I mean, worst case, they're going to be 10-5. They might be like 11-4. You're like, what? How is this possible? I picked them to be like in the AFC Championship game. I don't think they're going to get there. And I never thought if they went 11-4, it would have looked like this. But it's kind of on the table when you look at who they're playing. They're living a unique football life this season. I'll give them that.
Yeah, they get the Cardinals this week. Should win that game. The Patriots, with who knows what the quarterback's going to be. The Colts, the Bengals with another backup, and then finish Seahawks, Ravens. So yeah, they're going to be right in the mix. And we'll see if their offense. Pickett finally threw over the middle of the field last week between the hashes. Their offense, I think
what if they're like the 2 seed? I mean, what if somehow they win the division? I mean, it's on the
Bills
table.
Sneak in, the Bills would be like 4-point favorites on the road in the opening week.
The Bills aren't. I mean, you watched last week with the way Josh played. They can't be dead. I mean, beside the Eagles, who beats them last week? And then like the Niners and maybe the Chiefs. It's like they're beating every team in the league that way.
Yeah, there's 7 teams that I think based on everything I look at. There's only 7 teams that can win the Super Bowl this year. And then there's a big drop off. And the Bills are in that mix, and they might not make the playoffs. It's the Bills, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Dolphins.
Niners, Cowboys,
Eagles. That's it. And the problem with the Bills is you have a lot of these teams ahead of them. Like, for example, the Texans and Broncos play each other this week.
Yeah.
A lot of them play the Bengals too without Burrow coming up. But the Colts and Texans play each other. So there's like a bunch of free wins. And the Bills play the Chiefs, then the Cowboys, then the Dolphins.
Yeah, their schedule might just fuck them. Yeah.
So they got to win but if they get in, and then they sneak in as the 7, and you're the 2 in the AFC, you're saying, oh, fuck. But the best stat of the weekend was the Steelers finally got to 400 yards. The last time they got to 400 yards was the game before Matt Canada took over as offensive coordinator. They went like 55 games without getting to 400 yards. And then they get 400 yards the day after the game after he's gone. Just amazing. So maybe their offense will have more juice.
I've never heard a team, and I get it's been a long time. And that number specifically, celebrate. Like, you would never hear a good team talk about yardage if they had 16 points. It would never come up.
Hilarious.
I mean, never. You'd just be like, we got to score more points. Got to be better in the red zone. All we heard all week, 422 yards for it. It's like, you guys scored fucking 16 points. 16 points.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we talking about?
Yeah, hilarious. I'm assuming they're just tired of talking about that, but that does very, very telling.
I would get it if they had scored 28 points, right?
Yeah.
Like, awesome, 400 plus yards, 28 points, 16 points.
Yeah.
It's like the Patriots. I mean, it's just, okay. Well, Stuckey, keep an eye on those Steelers, man. They're coming. Take it easy, bro.
Absolutely. Good luck this weekend, and see you next week.